Today we're going to be analyzing the latest information from NHL's insider trading. Who are the top players starting the season on the top of the trade bait board? We have an update on the Brady Tkachuk situation and his contract with the Senators. We also have an update on the Robin Lehner situation that he's been talking about with the league and the PA. We also have some more news on waivers, injuries, signings, and more. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of information to cover here today. We're going to start off with a few news and notes when it comes to signings and waivers. First up, we got word today that the Anaheim Ducks are bringing back defenseman Ben Hutton on a professional tryout. Not often you hear of PTOs being announced so late in the training camp. Obviously, the Ducks feel like they have a need. They must be very interested in signing him, but probably want to see him on the ice a couple times first because there really isn't a ton of time left here in training camp to really get into a whole lot of action. Some teams have a couple of preseason games left, so we'll see if that leads to a contract. But as of right now, Ben Hutton is unsigned, and obviously, be good for him to find a contract if he's able to. So we'll see where that goes. We also saw some injuries as well. Colin White of the Ottawa Senators is going to be out for an extended period of time in their preseason game yesterday against the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was a bit of a fluky freak accident. Really, it wasn't anything major going on, but he fell awkwardly, went to the bench. You could see his shoulder was slouching over, and we don't know the exact diagnosis at this point. I know he was going for an MRI, but all they've said so far is it is bad news. He is going to be out for an extended, significant period of time. So means some shoulder injuries end up being like 4 to 6 months. I really don't know how long they mean by significant time. But it's not going to be a situation where he's back in a few days or even a few weeks. So we'll see what that does. That likely increases the odds of the Senators signing Tyler Ennis, who's there on a PTO. Of course, they're already short Brady Tkachuk, who we're going to talk about here in a few minutes as well. So I think more than likely Ennis gets signed, and that will be like a temporary replacement on the forward group. And they also have some youngsters that looked good in camp that could get a little bit more of a look as well. Now, also getting into another signing today. This one was just a minor league signing, but an NHL player many of you be familiar with. The Edmonton Oilers have signed Tim Schaller, but he gets an AHL only deal, which means he can play for their American Hockey League team, but he will not be eligible for call-up purposes. So at some point, if they re-sign him to an NHL contract, then that would be a possibility, but I think he might even need waivers to go through and get that. So we'll see what happens on that, but for now he'll play for them in the AHL. We also saw, of course, we talked about yesterday, Team Canada announcing their first 3 players for their Olympic team. And we got word today that Team Sweden has made those same choices. They've announced the first 3 players as being Avalanche captain Gabriel Landeskog, top defenseman Victor Hedman from the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Mika Zibanejad from the New York Rangers. So really no surprise on any of those players being a part of the Swedish team roster. Obviously, they've had solid careers, been solid players here recently as well. So we'll wait to see other news here from other countries as we start to get these announcements here in the coming days. Teams do have, I believe in the next week or so, have to submit a roster of up to 50 players. They don't have to submit any final rosters until well into the future, but they do have to submit a preliminary list of players that are being considered here for their Olympic teams in not too distant future. So we'll probably get word on what those lists look like, hopefully, once that's completed. We have some more waivers news. As I mentioned, we have another claim as well. The Minnesota Wild have claimed forward Rem Pitlick. He comes over from the Nashville Predators. They had him on waivers for the purpose of being assigned to their AHL team. Of course, that does not happen. So Minnesota claims him. So in order to keep Pitlick, basically they need to keep him on the NHL roster. They can't just send him to their minor league team. He'll need waivers to do that again. So obviously, when you see these claims, teams are not making claims with the intention on getting them to their minor league team, at least not immediately. So obviously, because of the extra forward coming into the Minnesota Wild organization, that does limit some of the players that are left in camp battling for spots. So I know a couple of those guys are some of their top prospects, like Marco Rossi and Matthew Boldy, who, of course, at this point, neither one are guaranteed to start the season with the big club. And it certainly decreases the odds now that at the very least, one of them at most will make the team at a training camp. If not, maybe both end up starting at the AHL level. So we'll see where things go with Minnesota, but clearly bringing him in does limit opportunities for other players. Now, on waivers today, we have a list of players. I'll give you a graphic on the screen here again to show you the full list. I'll then touch on some of the names that are a little bit more common. The Toronto Maple Leafs have goaltender Michael Hutchinson. Of course, he's been through waivers a few times. No big surprise here. Of course, they're going to keep their main two goaltenders, Campbell and Mrazek, at the NHL level. So for Hutchinson to go down to the AHL, then he needs to have waivers cleared first, which is the purpose of this. So we'll see if he ends up getting claimed or going to the Marlies. Obviously, this year there's no taxi squad, so you will see more goalie movement than he did last year, because teams were able to keep three goaltenders kind of protected on that roster between the roster and the taxi squad. Chicago Blackhawks have veteran forward Brett Connolly on waivers. Of course, he's gone downhill in his production. Of course, he got in a free agent contract with the Florida Panthers a few years back. Things were not working out there. He ended up getting traded to Chicago last year, and at this point, the Hawks are not even prepared to try to keep him on the NHL roster. I would say he'll probably clear given his contract, but obviously he very well could end up in the minors if that indeed happens. You never know. Another team might take a flyer on him, but I would be surprised given the fact he still has a little bit of term there. Arizona has youngster Boko Imama, of course, player I know I'm quite familiar with because he played his junior hockey for the St. John Sea Dogs. He's recently acquired by the Coyotes and had swapped with the Los Angeles Kings. So he's going back down to the minors if he clears. And the Washington Capitals as well have a few players on waivers that you can see, including Michael Scarbosa as well. So obviously another big group today. We'll see if there's any claims. We'll find out around supper time tomorrow afternoon if there's likely going to be more players again on waivers. Like I said, it's that time of year when rosters are being cut down. So a lot of these guys need to clear in order to go to their American Hockey League affiliated teams. Now, as I mentioned as well, we have some updates today, including Robin Lehner. Of course, as you probably know, in case you've been following along, we've talked about the situation a couple of times and started on Saturday with I guess we'll call it the Twitter tirade, where he started dropping bombs on social media, talking about how a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes in the NHL needed to change. He was calling on the NHL and the PA to make those changes, or he was going to continue telling stories day after day until he got some action on what he was looking to do. Of course, the next day, nothing came. We heard that he was having meetings. Well, Robin Lehner had a press conference today to kind of update everything. There was certainly some comments that were coming out before that, but we got to hear it straight from Robin Lehner himself, essentially saying that he has had meetings with the NHL. He's had meetings with the NHLPA. He's quite pleased with their direction and how the conversations have gone here so far. He's made it clear that he intends on keeping all future discussions private. I would suspect he'll probably only take to social media if he feels that they're not listening to him again. But he did say he's been trying to get attention and get some changes here for a few years, and he just hasn't really been getting the proper response to really proceed here. So clearly, like he said, it was like a cry for help going on social media to put this out there. And while he did indeed get their attention, and now that he has their attention, he's having some meetings already, and there has more planned. He said he doesn't want to be a distraction to his team. He doesn't want to, burn the league down, tear things down. He wants to inflict change, and I certainly think that we really should respect that. He's looking out for the younger generation of hockey players, not wanting to see them go through some of the things he saw other veteran players go through, or things that he's experienced himself, and trying to keep, everybody's best interest in mind for their current health and safety, as well as life after hockey. Like he said, as much as he wants to win a Stanley Cup, he cares more about people's lives than winning a cup, as much as that's, important to him. So certainly I think he has nothing but the best intentions here. I've seen him be scrutinized a lot on social media because of the things he's gone through in the past. He's battled a lot of demons, including addiction, including mental health issues. But at this point, Robin Lehner, to me, is as clear and best frame of mind you've seen in a long time. It's been that way for the last couple of years now. I really don't think there's anything like that at all. In my opinion, Robin Lehner cares a ton. He knows what he's been through himself. He's seen a lot of other things, and he doesn't want other people to have to go through that. And we'll see what comes from this. There won't be much really discussed publicly moving forward. So I guess we'll see what comes from this down the road. But at this point, he's quite content that he's gotten their attention and that they're working with him to go through what he has to say and try to get some changes made based on what his concerns are. Now, we also had word today that there's a couple of junior age players in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, both playing for the Victoriaville Tigers, who are facing criminal charges of sexual assault. And they, at this point, we don't know what the QMJHL intends to do. Obviously, you are innocent until proven guilty, but they're both facing different charges. The same sort of situation that we saw with Logan Mailloux. What happened with him when he went over to Sweden to play to have happened after the President's Cup victory. So we know that the team had a big team party at a hotel after they won the Quebec League Championship this past June. It's believed that the young female that's involved in this situation met one of the players, agreed to go to a room with him, got there, his teammate was there, and then that's where things went badly. That's all the news articles and information that's been released here so far. I personally am not happy with how the league's handled this so far. We'll see what they decide on. Apparently, will be a ruling sometime in the next 48 hours if they're going to be suspended or what the case is going to be and how things are going to be handled. I would think that they would be suspended until further legal action is decided upon, until the charges are answered to, I guess. But, the thing for me that I don't like is that these players were allowed to play in recent games, even though the team was aware of the situation and that the charges were coming. That, to me, is very disappointing to find out. This kind of conduct is not acceptable, and I really hope we don't continue to see that, but there's been too many situations popping up in recent weeks and months around young hockey players having these types of things. So hopefully people can see this and learn from these other people's mistakes, that this is not appropriate and obviously not a way to conduct yourself at all. Now, before we go into the rest of the video, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. We have some more updates here to talk about today, including the latest between the Senators and the Tkachuk camp on his contract extension for Brady. Of course, according to his brother Matthew, he's made it perfectly clear that when you deal with one Tkachuk, you deal with the whole clan of Tkachuks, and we know that they drive a hard bargain. But according to recent reports here between insider trading, talking about LeBrun and Dreger and Johnson, as well as Andy Strickland, who is based out of St. Louis for Valley Sports. The big divide here seems to be bridge deal versus long-term deal. The Senators only seem interested in the long-term deal, whereas Brady seems to want the short-term deal. And according to Andy Strickland, he's saying there hasn't really been a whole lot of communication. Both sides seem to be dug in with what they want. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't think we can really go with the whole narrative anymore that everything's fine and rosy and conversations are going well and progressing. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. There's been a lot of word from these reporters that talks have basically stalled big time, and that at this point each side wants what they want and that they're not even talking a whole lot. There's been days in between. According to Strickland, the Tkachuk camp has been disappointed with the lack of communication coming from Ottawa's side, but we'll see. I mean, obviously, we don't know 100% what the story is, but unfortunately, with Ottawa's history of not coming good on paying their star players, it does paint a bad picture for them. Appears to be a major group of fans, which rightfully so, quite nervous and upset and on social media that the Senators are going to botch this one and not want to pay him just like they've done with all the other guys, and that they won't be any further ahead in the long run. So to me, if you're Ottawa and you're Pierre Dorion and Eugene Melnyk, you need to get this done, save some face here, get your star player back in the lineup and move forward. Like, at one point is this going to end? Otherwise, you're just going to keep getting these high picks come in, have good rookie seasons, and then when it comes time to pay them, they leave. I mean, you have to stop this narrative and get this guy paid. So hopefully we'll see some progress here in the coming days. Also on TSN Insider Trading today, we had our first talk about the NHL trade bait board, even though the season's not fully underway, but they talked about a couple of names that will be rated at the top when the season starts. Well, could stay there until we see a deal get done. Of course, we're talking about San Jose Sharks center Tomas Hertl, Coyotes winger Phil Kessel. Now, in the case of Hertl, there is a chance he could sign an extension with San Jose, but as Pierre LeBrun went on to talk about, obviously with all the comments from Hertl and talking about what he's not unsure of his future. Obviously, he wants to be in a winning environment. The Sharks are certainly in a situation where they're not expected to be overly competitive this year. Many expect them to be near the bottom of the standings, and that very well could lead to them moving him as the season goes along. Clearly, for a lot of teams, he's going to be a number 2 center iceman. Certainly a very attractive piece on an expiring contract. He could be one of the bigger names at the NHL deadline this year. And even though Doug Wilson has made it known, the GM of the Sharks, that he wanted to talk to Hertl during training camp about potential extension, many just seem very skeptical that it makes sense or is going to happen based on where the team overall is at, and that we very well could see him on the move. I would certainly look to a few teams like the Bruins, for example. If things are not working out with their current group and they want to get that number 2 center, he certainly fits the bill with what they could be going after. So we'll see what happens, but Hertl likely gets moved sometime before the deadline. When it comes to Kessel, as we talked about before, he's made it perfectly clear and well known he wants out of Arizona. Only problem with him is he does come with a higher cap hit, but he has a very low salary. He's only making $1 million this year. The way the contract was structured, it was really, falls off at the end here. So for teams and looking to, get value but not spend a ton of real dollars, it is attractive that way. But the cap hit is still a little bit hard to kind of take over, so there might have to be some retention on that. According to Dreger, Kessel obviously would prefer to go to a contending team or a team that's likely going to be at least be in the playoffs, but at this point I think he'd probably accept a trade. I wouldn't say just about anywhere, but there's a lot of teams that would kind of fit the bill of being potential playoff teams this year, and obviously he is anxious to go. So if he has a good start and generates some interest early in the year, I would think that's a kind of trade that might not even have to happen at the deadline. I think Kessel could be a guy that's moved sooner than later, because we might see some teams kind of jump ahead of the curve here and make some moves early to set themselves up for to have those moves done, so they have more time to get adjusted to their rosters. As we know at the deadline, sometimes you get players moved, and then all of a sudden they don't have a ton of time to really get in sync with their new teams, and it doesn't always work right away. And sometimes you don't get that effect that you were hopefully looking for. So let me know what your thoughts are on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.